Hello and welcome to the first tutorial for the Black Octopus Organic Elements pack. This pack was all about creating sounds that had that dusty organic analog feel, and we want to show you some simple tricks and tools that you can use to recreate that in Logic without having to have a big old studio. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to load up one of the Logic instruments, which is the electric piano. It's a very nicely sampled instrument, but as you can imagine, it sounds very, very clear and very, very digital. So it sounds lovely, but there's quite a lot that we can do to that to make it sound like it came straight from a record. So what we're going to do first is we're going to have a look and open up our Finder, and we're going to take out some vinyl noise that we've taken. So this is vinyl crackle that we've recorded straight off a record. So let's just have a quick listen to this. There we go, and we can hear that lovely warmth that you get from a record. Now, we've recorded this one ourselves, but it is possible to go onto the internet and get one. There's a website called freesound.org, which releases audio under Creative Commons license, which is great. So if we have a look here at the vinyl crackle now, we can hear this, but we don't want this to just be playing all the way through. Okay, if it's just playing all the way through, it sounds like a layer. What we want to do is actually create a noise gate. So if we click here and we're going to load up a noise gate, and then we're going to have a look and we're going to turn the threshold right up so that the vinyl can't be heard. The vinyl noise cannot be heard. Okay, so this means now we can actually set up a sidechain. To do that, what we need to do with the instrument is we need to go to the electric piano, and we need to be able to send that on a bus, which goes into this sidechain input there, so that then the only time that the vinyl crackle is heard is when we are playing the sounds. So if we click here and we go to the first empty bus, which is bus 2. So we're going to click on that. And then we need to make sure that there's no output. We don't want to hear the sound that's coming out of there. We're just using it as a ghost input to the sidechain of the compressor. Okay, so once that's done, we can actually turn that up there, and then when we play the piano, you'll be able to see that coming through, but you won't actually be able to hear. Okay, so we can see that the signal's coming through there, which now means we can use that to affect the sidechain input. So if we just click here, and then we go down to the relevant bus, which is bus 2, and then we can trigger that. Now, any time that we play the piano, it's going to affect this, okay? So if we play, we can see that it's getting activity. Now, we're not going to be able to hear it just yet because we're not actually hitting play. We need to actually be pressing play, and we need to have the loop running for us to be able to hear it. So we'll just give you an example of that. So you can hear as soon as we hit the keys of the piano, the vinyl crackle comes through. Now we can experiment with the settings. First of all, we're just going to give it a little bit more release so that it doesn't stop completely dead. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is going to bring out that vinyl crackle a little bit more. So by raising up some of the high frequencies, we can make it really, really prevalent in our mix. Another good thing to do, the reason to do this as well, it means we can get slightly more volume out of it without getting some of the low-end noise that you might get from the stylus. Okay, so we're going to turn it down just a little bit, a little touch there. Okay, now as you can hear, the piano still sounds really, really crisp and really clean, which is great. But for that vintage feel, we need to start to adapt it somewhat. So there's a few things we can do. And the first thing that we're going to do is take off some of the high frequencies. In the digital realm, we have this full reenactment of the sound where you get the full frequency response. That wasn't always the case. And on older recordings, a lot of the high frequencies aren't represented as well. So to mimic this, we'll just take a low pass filter and take some of the top end off. Okay, so there we go. We're starting to get really close now. Now you can experiment with many, many different settings on the piano just to see what works for you. By just using a small bit of EQ, we've got a lot closer to the representation of the sound that we want. So as you can hear, from using some simple vinyl noise and by sidechaining it, we're starting to get some great sounds. Now I'm just going to slightly raise the release of the vinyl crackle, which means if we just have a listen, you can hear that the vinyl crackle actually carries on slightly from when we remove our hand from the keys. Just makes it sound a little more natural. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is start to layer up some effects. Now, modulation effects, if you're quite subtle with them, they can work really well. So we're going to use a rotary cabinet here. So what a rotary cabinet is a speaker inside a box or inside a cabinet that the speaker then rotates and the front of it is mic'd up. So you get different frequency content on the front and the back. So I just slightly changed the settings on here just to slow it down just a little bit, just to move it. When using slow modulation, it's actually very useful to make something sound a little more vintage. Just by slowly changing the sound, it sort of emulates what analog equipment does. So we can have a little bit of a listen here and see. So we've taken a very, very clean digital piano signal, and by slightly adapting the EQ and then using a noise gate with a sidechain, using some vinyl crackle, we've been able to emulate the sound that you would get from sampling a Rhodes off a vinyl. You can use this with any sounds, and it's a great tool to make these sounds a little more dusty and a little more vintage.